Om Shri Sai Ram, invoking Swami's divine blessings. I have been given this pleasant duty to introduce next speaker, Dr. V. Venugopal Rao, convener for Research Committee, St. Anne's College for Women, Hyderabad. Dr. V. Venugopal Rao completed his PhD from Osmania University. He is currently the convener for Research Committee and editor for AnQuest online journal, St. Anne's College for Women, Hyderabad. He taught genetics and biotechnology for graduates and BTech students at ICFAI University and has been involved in teaching at St. Anne's College from 1988 till date. He has served as a faculty member and placement committee member biotechnology program and has group coordinator biotechnology member for the ICFAI Institute of Science and Technology, ICFAI University. He took over as head of genetics faculty, St. Anne's College, Osmania University in 2010. He has also served as nodal faculty in AIDS awareness program by APSACS, Andhra Pradesh State AIDS Control Society, Government of Andhra Pradesh. He has reviewed several books in the field of genetics and he has been referee for many journals in the field of genetics, to name a few: IUP Journal of Genetics and Evolution, IUP University Journal of Environmental Sciences, IUP Journal of Genetics and Evolutions, IUP University Journal of Biotechnology, IUP University Journal of Systems Management, Indian Journal of Human Genetics, African Journal of Biotechnology, and he is also a lifetime member of Indian Society of Human Genetics. He has published more than 22 research articles in peer-reviewed national and international journals and has authored 3 books. Sai Ram. And I have, it's an honor and privilege to have you here, sir. Dr. V. Venugopal Rao.
Om Shri Sai Ram. At the outset, my humble pranams to Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba Varu. And also I am thankful to Professor Ashok who facilitated and arranged my visit here. I visited this campus in 1990s as a devotee, not as an academician. I think when Swami was here, I visited for darshan 2 times in 90s. Afterwards, this is the opportunity. I think it is opportunity provided by Swami, facilitated by Professor Ashok Garu. So I take this pleasure opportunity for me to talk in front of you. So this is only a kind of educative and informative lecture with less of research component. This lecture is aimed at to provide what are the opportunities basically available in the area of human genetics, what are the research areas, what are the departments available, probably after BSc what you can search for in the area of human genetics. To start with, I'll give you a brief introduction why we should study human genetics. First of all, human genome is very important. As you know, genome leads to proteomes because of its expression. Proteomes lead to metabolomics. I think you must have several sessions on this. If something goes wrong in genomics, that is reflected in proteomics. If something goes wrong in proteomics, that is reflected in metabolomics. So all our metabolic activities are smooth and going on well only when our genomes are correct and normal. This is one side of the story of genetics. The other side of story of genetics is not only sequence. What I was referring to earlier definition, if something goes wrong in genomics means it could be a mutation or a change in the basis that may lead to a wrong expression of proteins. But other side of this story, all of us have a normal DNA, we don't have any mutations, but still we differ in our expression levels wherein the knowledge of epigenetics is coming into picture. The epigenetics takes care of the patterns of methylation and acetylation. Though the sequence is similar in all of us, the expression levels are different. Sometimes even expression also changes. A kind of area which is taking care of this is also called genomic imprinting and all. We are not going into so many details, but here human health is because of our genetics, our epigenetics, and also the third important component is nutrition. Earlier notion was that a person needs 3000 calories per day to survive, but that is changed nowadays. They say that with just 1000 calories a man can survive, provided if his epigenetic mechanisms and genetic mechanisms are going normally and smoothly. The earlier sessions were talking a lot of antibiotics, and now just we have seen a video showing the danger of infection and taking antibiotics. So as Professor Sivakumar said, it has become a compulsory part of our life. But I strongly believe we can reduce the component of antibiotics if our genetics is okay, if our epigenetics is okay, if our mind, which controls all our human activities, is okay. That is my belief. We can reduce the intake of antibiotics provided we take precautions and proper care, where our epigenetic mechanisms have to be regulated, and people suggest that it is just 1000 calories with quality food, quality item. So that is where the genetics stands today. In fact, taking so many medicines, antibiotics, there was a question, can you really avoid it? Yes, it is possible. But anyway, one of the aspects is genetics, which really makes you resistant to some of the problems and all. So now we'll take on to the first slide. So this slide just tells about what is human genome, and most of you have already known about this. Human genome was revealed in 2001, Craig Venter, and this is also called Human Genome Project. Celera Genomics has revealed this. And if you look back into Mendel's story of genetics, he has rediscovered, his laws were rediscovered in 1900 by 3 people, Sherlock, Correns and Igor Iris. Whatever Mendel worked in 1965 was revealed in in 1900. But if you see the time elapsed between Mendel's discovery till the genomic discovery is 100 years. It's quite a good time which elapsed. But what progress we have made so far? Now let us go into the next slide. So there are 3.2 billion base pairs, basic information, out of which 98% of our DNA is junk DNA and 2% of the DNA is expressive DNA. You know what is expressive DNA? Which codes for proteins. The next slide. Okay. So Human Genome Project also try to locate the genes onto the chromosomes because we have 24 maps possible in man, including Y chromosome. There are 24 maps. So Celera Genomics, they also have tried to locate the genes onto different chromosomes. One of the techniques they utilize was large score method, because we cannot conduct test crosses as we conduct in plants and animals. We are restricted in mating patterns because human reproduction is controlled by social, moral, ethical issues. We cannot cross human beings as we like. So we are restricted to go for pedigree analysis, take parental genotypes, then children genotypes, compare how many are recombinants. Based on that, they have developed a score called large score, a statistical measure, likelihood of odds, which tells that a particular gene is located on a particular chromosome with so much recombination fraction. The next alternative map that is available apart from the chromosomal maps is mitochondrial map is also available. So one of the problems man is facing today because of mutations in mitochondrial genome is, I wrote it here, it is a cytoplasmic inheritance problem, Leber optic atrophy, that is degeneration of the optic nerve, which leads to partial blindness. If mother carries that mitochondria, all the children are liable to get this. Father is not responsible because father's mitochondria will not be there in the fertilization. Sperm does not have any cytoplasm and mitochondria. Basically, mitochondria is inherited from the mother to the children. If mother has a visibility problem because of this, all the children may get. But most of the times it is the males who suffer more with this problem. Could be because of hormonal effect and all they say. Females are escaped, but males are more affected. And this is a karyotype which we usually develop in our labs using lymphocyte culture techniques. And this is G-banding technique where we use GIMSA. And we work out the patterns, arrange them according to the size. And this is a male karyotype where X and Y chromosomes are shown. And the largest chromosome available in man is first chromosome, which is very much important, and see so many characters and some of them are diseases are located on. It plays a very crucial role. So one must look at the first chromosome and try to locate all these problems. Earlier I told 2% of the genome is expressive and 98% is junk DNA. That 2% constitutes 30,000 genes or 30,000 functions. So far we could be able to understand only 5,000 functions. So a lot of work has to be done in this area. And this 98% junk DNA, the word junk should not mislead. Suppose if you eat junk food, you will suffer bad health. But here junk DNA is protecting us. Junk food is damaging, but junk DNA is protecting. So how junk DNA is protecting? It is made up of transfer RNA, ribosomal RNA, introns, and heterochromatic regions and all. They all play a role in the regulation of gene activity. So they really are helping us. Junk should not mislead us. Junk is really helping us in correct expression of the genes. The next important chromosome is the X chromosome. It is proved in the laboratory, sir. Even in cell cultures, if you take out X chromosome, it will die. X chromosome is very much essential for the normal survival of a cell. So the experiments conducted in the laboratories maintaining cell cultures, they tried to remove the X chromosome, immediately cell died. That means it is very important DNA which is responsible for the maintenance of life. And so many characters are located, and this is responsible for X-linked inheritance where mothers are carriers and children suffer from the problems. You know what are the problems? Can you name any one problem which is sex-linked? Hemophilia, color blindness, Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Any other? These are all X-linked recessive. There is also X-linked dominant condition which is vitamin D resistant rickets. They suffer from bone problems. Even if you provide vitamin D supplements, they cannot recover. If they are not able to recover even after nutrition supplement, we can suspect some genetic mechanism which is going wrong and causing the development of rickets. This is what the list of junk DNA, tRNA, rRNA, microRNA, but all of them are really helping us. Even promoter areas and enhancers. One is cis-acting, the other one is called trans-acting. You know the difference between cis-acting and trans-acting? Cis-acting is the situation where the promoter is needed immediately beside the gene. Then trans-actor is a enhancer which can be present anywhere in the genome. It need not be immediately beside the gene, but it controls the expression of the gene, enhances the activity of the gene. That's why they are categorized as cis-acting and trans-acting. And pseudogenes are the replicated genes. But the question is, why should we would have so many duplicated genes? This is mainly for maintaining storehouse or a reservoir. Why there should be a buffering system, a reservoir to meet future challenges. To meet future challenges. So that is the reason why all the genes are having standby spare genes. For example, hemoglobin, there are several spare genes. Histones have spare genes. These spare genes may not work today, but tomorrow, whenever it is needed. It is the course of evolution where some of the fragments become functional. And introns within the genes are regulatory today, but these introns may evolve into exons in future whenever the function is needed or modified. And recent studies have changed the notation. It is not just 2%, now they have given it as 8% as the coding DNA, 92% as non-coding after rediscovery of so many other proteins and all. So in future, if you work on this, you may increase that component still higher. But as on today, it is 8% coding, 92% is non-coding. This diagram I have chosen and I have developed on my own thing. Here, we can imagine three important fields in human genetics. One is at a population level, where you go to a population, see the health status of the people and identify any problem, suspect that there is some genetics in it. Then that information has to be translated by the next area of genetics, that is genetic diagnostics. A laboratory procedure is carried out, either taking a blood sample or serum or any other fluid of the body, where we go for genetic diagnostics. Once we come out with the information, crucial information related to genes and proteins, that information is again translated to medical genetics, where the knowledge of medical genetics is applied. That is leads to the application where treatment schedules are prepared. But one more important area which is emerging nowadays is bioinformatics. This bioinformatics has link to all the fields. Whatever the data generated out of diagnostics, like DNA sequences or protein sequences or any molecular structures, they can be further analyzed through bioinformatics. One of the important area of bioinformatics is phylogeny, where we relate man to other organisms and see how much homology is there. This is called homology searching, where we use BLAST and other tools to analyze and develop a tree called phylogenetic tree, which helps us to compare genomes and utilize those genomes for human health. And other area where bioinformatics is linked to medical genetics is, let us say there are some complex disorders like cancers and multifactorial disorders, hypertension, diabetes, where there are several target proteins. If you discover a particular drug, let us say there is a list of drugs which are in the trials, we don't know which drug is more efficient. There we have a tool called Malegro and docking mechanisms. You try these all the list of drugs with a target protein, and you can find out which particular drug is more binding to the target, and also is it really toxic or not, we can check. So that information really helps us to go into the medical management of a patient, treatment or management of the patient. Essentially, population genetics deals with these are all the areas where we can work out monogenic traits incidence, calculation of gene and genotypic frequencies, testing Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Because Hardy-Weinberg proposed that populations will maintain their equilibrium of genes and genotypes, but these are disturbed frequently by the forces called mutation selection, recombination, genetic drift. So this study is really important to identify heterozygote advantages. One of the markers which is already identified as heterozygote advantage is sickle cell anemia, who are supposed to be resistant to malaria in endemic environments wherever malaria is very high, especially in forest habitats. This was first discovered in South Africa, but later on in Indian populations also we found this gene, which is very much elevated in tribal areas. This is because of one of the advantages that they become resistant to malaria. So because some forms of malaria are lethal, they kill the individual. The malaria will not respond to antibiotics or drugs whatever that are available. There are some species of Plasmodium falciparum and other which are really dangerous. In such cases, this works. Sickle cell people escape, they will escape because parasite dies because of hypoxia in RBC. So, but why we are focusing on this example? Till today, we don't know how many of us are really heterozygotes and carrying advantages of resistance. Still, it has to be explored. The two Indian population is very much diverse compared to other populations of the world, and all the countries are looking at our population because it is a good germplasm with lot of variations. Probably we have several advantages. Actually, people who depend on sterilized mineral water in US, if you just change climate, they will faint or die. But Indians are not like that. They are quite resistant. I believe that they are quite resistant. But our Indians who are going and settling abroad, coming back, still hold on that mineral bottle, and sometimes they pose they are not immune. But nothing happens to us because we are better over other populations in terms of especially resistance. And this field takes into consideration tracing of family pedigrees for monogenic disorders, and they follow the models of autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, sex-linked dominant, sex-linked recessive. And one of the important consequences in Indian populations is consanguineous marriage, where relative marries another relative. This leads to expression of homozygotes recessive genes which come to expression, cause the problem. And we surveyed some of the Hyderabad populations for occurrence of these problems, and we have one in Institute of Genetics and Hospital for Genetic Diseases where data bank is built up, and we compared between unrelated and related. We found there is significantly higher number of mentally feeble or physically retarded record is available. Then the incidence of multifactorial diseases, they are very complex, but because inheritance will not show a definite pattern like monogenic disorders. Why? Because here environment plays a crucial role, but still we can identify some genes which are called candidate genes, and sometimes we can relate it to our anthropometric traits, the body height, weight and other measurements, and QTLs, which are quantitative trait loci, which are responsible for controlling multiple factor traits. And here I have quoted some of the candidate genes which are involved in cancers. P53, negative regulator of cell cycle, BRCA1, BRCA2 and myelocytomatosis. These are all the genes which are quoted for breast cancers. For example, P53 is a tumor suppressor gene which is not produced in sufficient amounts, leads to breast cancers in females. It's not only breast cancer. Now today they believe that P53 interferes with most of the cancers, but evidence is available from breast cancers. And this is one of the pedigree showing a theoretical diagram where there is a white piece of the gene. This white gene is defective, and the father is affected with the problem. See here, father is suffering from a problem, but the mother is not affected. Here two copies are normal, here one copy is defective, but why it is expressing in single copy? Because it is a dominant trait. So all the dominant genes express in single dose, but for recessive disease you need two doses of it, because there is a single gene which is expressive. It is passed on to the progeny. So if you look into the percentage, this is affected son, affected daughter, these two are normal. So overall we can say that 50% of the progeny will suffer. It's a theoretical model, whatever I have drawn, but it is proved real in populations also when you have sample size, large sample size, and a particular disease. But you can quote examples of this autosomal dominant inheritance. Do you know what are the examples? Autosomal dominant. Can you tell any one example? Polydactyly one, extra fingers. That is a normal. That will not disturb our health. Any gene which disturbs our health in dominant condition, which is related to brain degeneration, affecting the nervous system. Huntington's chorea. Huntington's chorea is a problem with delayed penetrance. Delayed penetrance in the sense the person suffers, he will have the gene by birth, but the symptoms are seen beyond 30 years or 35 years. So as age progresses, the gene expression gradually increases. By the time he reaches 30 years, it will be maximum, and they will suffer from this disorder where they have involuntary movement of the muscles. Actually, we are lifting our hand, we are walking, this is a voluntary action. Then what is involuntary action? The heartbeat is involuntary. We need not tell heart you beat it. But hands and legs are voluntary muscles. But in them, voluntary muscles become involuntary. So they will be continuously swinging hands and swinging feet. They will have difficulty of walking, difficulty of performing a task because their limbs are continuously convoluting. So this is one of the problems. In Hyderabad, we have identified some cases of this, and they were referred to Institute of Genetics, where PCR is used to identify what type of mutation that is carried on. Mostly the gene suffers from deletions. Sometimes it is a duplication, but both of them lead to similar symptom, but subtypes are different. This is autosomal recessive, where 1/4 of the children will be affected. But to produce a recessive disorder, both the father and mother should be carriers. The white gene that is located there, this is the defective gene, and one defective copy is here. When both the parents are heterozygous, then only one child is produced. If one of them is carrier, the other parent is not carrier, there is no problem. So only when both the parents are carriers, the risk estimated will be 25% of the children will be suffering from the problem. This is X-linked recessive inheritance, where mother is a carrier because he has one defective gene, that is passed on to mostly the boy. But why female is protected? Because there is a normal X which is contributed by the father. A female does not express a condition in single gene because he gets the normal X from the father. So mostly our mothers are carriers, we are the sufferers. If father is affected, daughters are carriers. Okay, sons will not get affected. This is what happens in X-linked recessive. This is one particular type of the marriage which is very common in Andhra Pradesh, that in coastal Andhra Pradesh. This is called MBD, a man marrying mother's brother's daughter. Now you look into the pedigree here. These two are the couple. He is marrying mother's brother. These two are called SIFs. So if this fork tells that she is the product of the parents, he is also the product of the same parents. This fork and this fork. So these two are the progeny of the parents. So this man marrying a mother's brother's daughter. So there is a statistical tool to roughly know what could be the risk of the children from this marriage. See here it is calculated as half to the power of, because in every generation the probability is half and half. You just count the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A standard formula is given by Sival Wright, a population geneticist. So to that extent we can calculate, and it is found that theoretically the value is 6.25% of the progeny from such marriages are affected with recessive disorders because of homozygosity. This can be proved if you have sufficient sample size and you are looking at one particular target disease. These records are also available where we proved more or less the percent is matching with 6.25%. And we have some research projects. Inheritance of obesity, multifactorial trait, but candidate genes are available. So we took women students of our college, and that is related to their height, weight, body mass index, and also antigens we took as markers like blood group antigens to study the association, and cholesterol profiles were also related to that, and the paper is published. And the second area of research what we are doing, case studies of monogenic disorders. One of them is epidermolysis bullosa, which is a monogenic trait. In these patients, the skin suffers from lot of blister formation, and this is the gateway. Actually, our skin is the gateway. It's a border security force which will prevent most of the bacteria and virus. But here in them, lot of blisters, and they invite opportunistic most of the pathogens, and they die because of secondary infections and all. But the basic symptom is their skin is totally made up of blisters, and they will die before reaching 5 to 6 years of age. But we identified one case in Hyderabad, and that has been taken up by one of the students in third year of genetics BSc. Those students who take up projects and take up case studies, we will give extra credit outside CGPA. So that is added as extra credit. It will not add up to CGPA, but we can give extra credit to that. So that becomes a plus point when they go for PG and other research opportunities. And we also have a project on inheritance of blood pressure and associated genetic factors, height, weight, body mass index, and of course some cholesterol profiles also can be included here, which is ongoing. And the last one is epidemiology of allergic rhinitis. As all of us know, allergy is to some extent is determined by our genotype. So we are looking into what are the allergens and how rhinitis is caused. Is it really inherited from generation to generation? That is one project we have. This is the family pedigree developed by one of the students who is now third year of BSc, and these two are affected with epidermolysis bullosa, these two. Because there is a recurrence, we can suspect strong genetic mechanism. But what happened here, when we wanted to see the pedigree, entire pedigree which is traced for 7 to 8 generations, nowhere else it is repeated. Then we are stuck up how to support this finding, because no one is affected. So if in the case of dominance character, we see that the character is repeated in every generation. But if it is dominant lethal, that cannot be passed on. They will die very early in the young child. So dominant lethals cannot be inherited, but dominant viable mutations can be inherited. So we are tied up what to do. But then we inquired into the profession of the parents, and he was working with the asbestos industry. So probably one of the germinal mutation may be there, which is caused by asbestos industry. He is exposed to a lot of chemicals in asbestos. But that has to be still proved. We suggested a mechanism where the dominant gene which is present in the father is getting transmitted to both of them, and C is normal with both recessive genes, but the dominant gene is inherited to both of them. That is a contribution we have made, but we will know the clear DNA through only PCR analysis, which we are planning in future. A PCR helps us to know which particular type of mutation is it a dominant mutation or recessive mutation. So we have not analyzed it, but we suspected it is because of a mutation, because nowhere else we are finding it. If it is a recessive disorder, we will find somewhere with skipping generations. If it is dominant, we will find in all the generations, if it is viable. But the people are dying early in a very early young stage, that cannot be transmitted. They cannot marry and they cannot transmit the gene. And we also have a project which monitors affected children and study their disease progression and response to special care in the institutes of mentally challenged as case studies, and also it is outreach activity of the college. And we identified a school which is adopted by Institute of Genetics and Hospital for Genetic Disease by Begumpet, where we are following the children. Downs, Pettow's, Edwards, so many syndromes are there, and how are they progressing. in terms of disease, and how are they responding to the management, because there is no cure, it is only management, whether their intellectual capability is increasing by training or they are not improving. So we are making studies on them to best to help them out to come out with one particular activity, but they survive only up to 15 years to 20 years. Afterwards they will die. But till such time, as a service activity, can we do something? Can we support them? So it is possible. There are management schools where we go there and we'll participate in that, and also we will see how they are responding to a particular type of activity and all. And other research institutes we have quoted out here in India and abroad. Central for Human Genetics is located very much here in Bangalore. Institute of Genetics, Ahmedabad, Newcastle, these are all the areas. France, Germany. National Human Genome Research Institute, USA. University of Chicago, Pittsburgh also has this human genetics. Banaras Hindu University offers MSc Genetics. Andhra University also has it, and Bhopal. Some of the places, if you are interested, you can look into their prospects. After BSc, you can take up any career which is related to human genetics. And why genetic diagnostics is very important today? Here, the available methods are very, very costly. So one needs to spend thousands of rupees on each sample, which is not affordable. Now people are looking at the alternative procedures using some strips which are similar to cellulose paper. And one of the companies in US, they are trying with a paper which is similar to cellulose, but not exactly nitrocellulose, which is very costly. And they entrap radioactively labeled or fluorescent labeled probes onto that and add our genomic DNA, see whether it is giving fluorescence or not. If the probe is matching with our DNA sequence, it fluoresces, something like that. So why we are concentrating on this? Can we make it cost effective so that it is reachable to common man? That is where they are involved in this. But this is a very good area of research for you people in future, where you can come out some alternative tool using a paper or any other substratum where that particular probe known sequence is there and your human DNA is added, which is labeled. Does it really fluoresce? It fluoresces because it has complementary sequence with the probe which is already entrapped in it. This is one of the areas where you can take it up. And the next area, the genetic diagnostics is divided into two diagnostics. One is chromosomal, the other one is molecular. In chromosomal genetics, we have cytogenetics, which deals with karyotyping, arrangement of chromosomes according to centromere and size. And it is also going with the FISH, fluorescent in situ hybridization, where fluorescently labeled molecule is directly hybridized within the cell. That's why it is in situ. Take the cells, add the probe is absorbed by the cell, and it will go and bind in one of the chromosomes wherever there is homology, and that is where we can detect the location of the segment and what is the problem caused and what disease is caused. This is also one of the techniques which is utilized nowadays apart from karyotyping. So this is called FISH karyotyping, where specific segments can be located and the relationship between the disease and the segments can be worked out. And the other area of this is identification of anomalies. There are syndromes which are so far identified. 13th trisomy is called Patau syndrome, 18th trisomy is called Edwards syndrome, and 21st trisomy, all of you know, it is Down's child. And even in X category we have Klinefelter XXY and X0 a Turner syndrome. In all of them, what is the common thing is all of them are mentally retarded. Intellectual capability is very low. But can we support them in giving some other training where they can pick up some physical activity, because they cannot score marks in the exam, they cannot take up regular system of education. So we are looking into the alternatives where can we train them in other physical professions and make them self-sufficient till they survive maybe maximum 20 or 25 years. That is where we are getting involved. And molecular diagnostics deals with identification of gene disorders and gene mutations in the families. Blotting techniques are a major part nowadays. Southern blot, northern blot, and western blot. The first one is DNA hybridization. We have known probe and unknown sequence try to match. The next one is northern blot, where you take mRNA, messenger RNA, which is already expressed by a gene. We don't go into DNA level. We directly extract mRNA, fragment it, and pick up one messenger RNA, hybridize with your known DNA sequence to get the information. The western blot is something similar to immunology, where each protein molecule can have antibody. So antibody which is labeled with fluorescent chemical will be tried to known unknown protein, whether it is giving fluorescence or not. Western blot is to know unknown proteins and their functions. And PCR diagnostics is to find out mutant heterogeneity, because a disease can be expressed by different mutations in different sites of the DNA. But PCR is highly specific, which helps us to amplify a specific mutation. So that is where we can identify what are the different forms of a particular disease. And electrophoresis as such is a traditional procedure where we separate DNA fragments and also proteins to know who are the carriers. If you know that parents are the carriers, they can go for genetic counseling. And ELISA technique to detect small molecules such signals like amino acids and hormones. Enzyme linked immunosorbent assay, which is one of the immunological techniques involved. And HPLC is nowadays used to separate mutant hemoglobins, more exactly identified. And DNA sequence, there are three methods: Maxam, Gilbert, chemical cleavage method, and Sanger's dideoxy termination. The third one is next gen, where it is real time identification. We don't need an electrophoresis. You take a DNA entrapped onto the slide, glass slide, annealed on a glass slide, allow it to go for PCR, amplify, it forms a dot, a big dot on the slide, and at a time we add one nucleotide which is having a terminator moiety, terminator molecule, as well as fluorescent chemical. The moment you add that, if that is complementary, that is taken up, adding DNA polymerase, which progresses the DNA synthesis, similar to dideoxy termination, but we need not go for electrophoresis. Immediately result can be recorded by fluorescence. And here the advantage of using next gen is AGCT. Each of them can be labeled with a different color. The color is exhibited, the color is recorded, and each time we add and it terminates, then terminator is removed, fluorescent label is also removed, so to avoid confusion. The second base is added. Like that we proceed on without any electrophoresis. Just on glass slide you can see the color patterns and know what is the sequence of the DNA. The next, the last one is nanopore technology, which is coming out. It is still in trials. Each base is passed through a nanopore. The nanopore is such a smaller size which allows the bases one by one. But when the base is going through the pore, the electrodes are fixed. These electrodes detect the charge of that nucleotide and translate that into a signal. But they found that these four signals of four nucleotides are different, at different levels of voltage. So that is where they could record all the bases in a DNA. But that is still in trials. It has not come into market. Next gen is there in the market, but nanopore is still in trials. And the medical genetics part takes care of prenatal diagnosis for detection of syndromes and disorders. Ultrasonography is a non-intervention procedure because we are not interfering with the fetus. Okay, 5 minutes. So amniocentesis, Coriolis villus, genetic, these are all the. So here, if any problem is detected, medical termination of the pregnancy is advised, and recurrence probability, if it is very high, generally we adopt them to go for adoption of a needy person instead of bearing the burden. The alternative would be adoption of a child who needs the support. That is where socially relevant and ethically correct. And newborn screening is going on, but it is optional. Now people are thinking that shall we make it a compulsory program? But in India there is a great danger. Now even Indian government should go for a compulsory screening, because out of every 25 individuals, one seems to be carrier for thalassemia. So we don't know, we may be carriers. Out of 25, one is a carrier. If we are carriers, if we marry our relative, she will also tend to be carrier, and the child suffers from thalassemia. And these are all the ethical issues which you have to follow. Informed consent, confidentiality of the information. If you reveal the results to society, they may exploit carriers and affected people. They are boycotted in the society. So keeping confidentiality is very much important in genetic. And these are all some of the. So here gene correction is possible. It has been tried in ADA and cystic fibrosis. One is in vitro. In test tube we correct genes. In vivo we directly give the gene to the affected tissue at somatic level, like horizontal. One of the speakers mentioned about horizontal genetic transfer. So we can correct somatic tissues using. But here also informed consent is needed. Embryo editing is one of the latest technologies, which is called CRISPR. CRISPR, cluster regulatory interspaced palindromic remotes, which are discovered in bacteria. They are palindromic repeats which can hold the desirable genes with a cluster of enzymes, and these are treated to the embryo which is found to have some problem, and this system will go and edit and correct. You need not pinpoint one target and say you have to go and correct it. Automatically these palindromic repeats carrying several normal genes along with set of enzymes will go into the embryo, edit the entire genome, correct them and come back without any human intervention. This is the automated technique available. This is also now is on experimental trials. And future direction, there are several articles on designer babies. Can we combine required traits in our children? I want to have a complexion, curly hair, presence of dimples and all, intellect and height. Is it possible? Is the future direction. It may be possible. And cloning a desirable embryo into many copies is possible, but there are ethical issues involved. What is the ethical? Lot of controversy, because business ethics in production and marketing of such babies may be exploited in the society. And bioinformatics is one of the areas which is emerging. We have functional genomics, proteomics and structural genomics, where their roles, functions, and in the case of structural genomics, chaperones which play a role in folding pattern will be studied, and how the protein is folded is very important for its normal function. All this information is needed for a patient for further management of the disease. And comparative genomics is where we can exploit benefits of tissues from other organs. So there was one episode where pig's heart was transplanted to man. Nowadays they are looking at pig. Almost all the organs of pig can be transplanted to man. This is the current notation. Why? Because pigs and man share many of the sequences. Homology is found to be very, very, very high. So even if somebody calls you pig, don't get offended, because pig is supposed to be our close relative. Okay, many sequences are similar. So if you Google search, it will give list of pigs and organ markets available. What are the organs they are maintaining and all. A lot of work is going on in the area of pigs. And the last question that can be answered is how is man related by ancestry? This is by phylogeny through niece genetic distance. We can calculate how much man is distant from apes and other organisms. Pharmacogenomics, drug interactions leads to personalized medicine, and a drug and target protein binding assay, especially for cancers and other complex diseases. And we have completed one project in the area of molecular docking, where impact of aromatase is studied in breast cancer. We filtered out 2 drugs. One is anastrozole, the other one is diethyl stelbestrol. We tried 10 drugs, out of which one was the strongest, the other one was the weakest, and all the other drugs were intermediate in expression. This recommendation can go to practitioners. We are recommending the medicine, but this is only a dry lab work in silico, but you have to go for wet lab testing also to see the binding efficiency of a drug to the target protein. And we have effect of polyphenolic compounds as antioxidants and protection of human DNA. A DNA damaged is taken, and this polyphenol is applied to see whether the DNA is getting repaired. That is one of the projects we have, and these are all the publications in the last 5 years. Thank you for patient and hearing, because after the lunch they had this. So any doubts?